So, lawmakers in New York are in the process of pushing through legislation that would ban some proof of work mining operations. Can you walk us through where we are in this process and just how close this bill is to passing?
The bill actually, this is the second turn of it. So it died last year when electrical union came out and wrote a letter and said, hey, we actually have gotten a lot of jobs from Bitcoin mining generally. And now it's back. So it was passed by one group, and now it still has to pass through the Senate. And so that's where we're at this week with it. It's unfortunate that it's come back because I think we still haven't had a chance for the lawmakers to really understand the benefits of Bitcoin mining for the state. And so that's kind of where we're at now.
Now, for those who are just jumping into this debate, can you give us a quick rundown of what's at stake here? And if it passes, what would change for Bitcoin miners in New York?
The moratorium says that any miner that is not using 100% renewable energy is not able to expand or renew permits. And any miner that is not using 100% renewable energy is not able to join as like a participant in New York. What this means for Bitcoin is a few things. One, Bitcoin will be fine. Just like when China shut down, Bitcoin is resilient. The network will continue to operate. What it means for New York is something different. So New York shutting down Bitcoin mining and really like marginalizing one industry, it makes it seem like New York is closed for business for all things related to Bitcoin mining. And, unfortunately, Bitcoin miners will find a different location. It won't be in New York. So it will drive jobs somewhere else. It will drive economic growth somewhere else. And New York will just, be where they're at now without thinking about like the future of where the industry and where Bitcoin can go.
Yeah, and if talent in New York does leave, where do you expect them to go?
Texas seems to be pretty open for Bitcoin miners. So that could be one location that we see miners flock to.
So continuing on that last point, what is the impact on New York's economy and jobs?
The impact on New York's economy and jobs. So if we think about the hash rate that's in New York, there's estimate about 3% of the hash rate. There's some large companies that means that they won't be growing any further in New York. There's also, a lot of companies that do things outside of just, mining that could consider moving jobs elsewhere. So things like Galaxy, right? Like we have a mining group. There's Foundry that's based entirely in New York. And, we are both growing, right? Our growing our teams significantly. And if New York is closed for business, like it does question why are Bitcoin miners going to work there?
So how real are the energy concerns around Bitcoin mining?
Every industry uses energy, and energy usage is not a bad thing. It's where people think that something is useful or not. And that's where I think the debate starts to happen, right? Like, do we think that Bitcoin is useful? And I think that's, something that is really like subjective. Bitcoin is something that is a universal currency used all over the world. It's used in multiple different scenarios from, first world countries of investors investing in things like funds to people that use it as a lifeboat, right? To be able to leave different locations as they're like saving. So I think it comes down to utility. When we look at the energy piece of it, the Bitcoin Mining Council came together last year to share and promote transparency around Bitcoin's energy usage. And what we find is that it's sustainable, right? The energy usage is 65% sustainable energy that accounts 50% of the network. We can't really look at any other industry and say, this is exactly how much sustainable energy that this industry uses in totality. But for some reason, we put Bitcoin on a different pedestal.
Is there a better way to regulate proof of work mining in the US?
I would say banning it is probably not the best way to regulate it because it's just going to go somewhere else, right? Miners just seek the cheapest form of electricity that they can get, right, to be economical. I think that if there was a solution where we could think about like growing in a way that was able to meet the state goals would make sense, which I think miners, would probably be open and willing to do. The hard part is, by saying you have to use 100% renewable, you're really marginalizing an industry because the grid in New York is not 100% renewable.
What do you say to people who ask whether Bitcoin could ever transition from a proof of work consensus mechanism to proof of stake?
Bitcoin doesn't sacrifice security for anything.
Now, obviously, Ethereum is in the process of transitioning to proof of stake, and that's expected this year. Can you talk a little bit about what that means for miners on that network?
Yeah, so I actually focus all of my time on Bitcoin mining, so don't really focus much time on Ethereum mining, but this concept of Ethereum moving to proof of stake has been something that has been talked about for years. As a reminder, Ethereum is still using energy. They are still using proof of work, right? And I think that's one thing that has been kind of interesting to see develop over the course of the last year, with the attack really being on Bitcoin's energy usage. Yes, it's bigger, but there are other currencies out there that are still using proof of work. I don't know a lot about how many miners, ETH miners, are in New York, but I imagine that because the energy usage is less than Bitcoin mining, there could be a way that they could fly under the radar.
Now, this isn't the first time that New York, as you already pointed out, has tried to ban, in some capacity, proof of work mining. Last year, again, as you pointed out, it was the electrical union workers that jumped in to defend the mining industry. Where are they this time around? And what's Galaxy's position on this bill?
We at Galaxy believe in Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, and we have, obviously believe in that because we have a whole business unit dedicated to it. So I think, we encourage lawmakers to learn, and we're like all ears to help teach, right, anything that we can about Bitcoin and mining. So I think there's a lot of different people behind the scenes that are trying to really push forward a study bill versus like a complete moratorium. I haven't had any interaction with the electrical union, but there's a lot more like blockchain association, right, chamber of digital commerce, groups within the crypto ecosystem that are trying to really hone in on this bill and really try to educate lawmakers to make the right decision.
Now, New York is often seen as a first mover with respect to policymaking. Could other states follow its lead if this bill does indeed pass?
Yeah, I think that's one of the main concerns, right? Like we think that like this could be something that could take off. I really encourage, lawmakers to really take a step back and think about what this could do for New York as a whole, and also think about, how this sets New York back in terms of jobs and economic growth.